Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Paisley. For those of you who do not know me, thanks for being here. And we have a video on one of my favorite topics ever, spirituality. Spirituality can mean so many different things for everyone on this earth. I mean, we have over 7 billion people on this planet, so obviously we have over 7 billion different realities on this planet as well. So just gonna be talking about my spiritual path, my spiritual, practices that I like to step into, especially since now in New Zealand, we're back in our third round of lockdowns, or second one that's really intense. What better way to tap into some spiritual practices that make you come back to self or invite you back to self than now? I know that for me, I was really busy, was working nonstop, teaching nonstop as well, and so it was harder for me to step back into my self practice only because I wasn't prioritizing it. And so now that everything has been basically halted and we're at level 4 lockdown, so meaning we can't really go anywhere or leave anywhere except for walks. Only things open, our grocery stores and gas stations and pharmacies and things like that. Obviously, I'm not working right now in the Lululemon store, but I am still able to teach online, which is really great that I still have that outlet. Long story short, I have all this time on my hands. Like me, and I've said before in my past videos, lockdowns are not my favorite thing ever. Feeling disconnected is not my favorite thing ever. So I've really encouraged myself to step back into my spiritual practices just to, cope with any anxiety that may be coming up or any other feelings that are arising, which they definitely have been in this isolating situation. Thankfully, I do have my loving partner Jack and my dog Olive, as you guys already know. Nonetheless, it's still an isolating time, and us as creatures, as humans, we are wired for connection. So it's so important for us to practice, especially right now, things that make us feel like ourselves. And so that's what I'm sharing today. Just getting back on my spiritual horse, because I have been definitely off it with all this busyness. Like I said before, it's just my lack of prioritization, and it's definitely has taken a toll on me. And I feel like whenever I step away from my spiritual practice for such a long time, it's harder to get back into it, and there's so much more work built up. It just takes a lot of breaking down barriers and walls in order to get to the source, when if you have, at least in my experience, when you have a sustainable and consistent practice, these walls and barriers aren't as hard to break down, or anything that you have to work through is harder to break down. But now it was hard to break down. So these are some of the practices that have made me feel like me in this weird time, especially being so far away from family. Yeah, so just wanted to share that with you. There's only 5 things to share, 5 simple practices that have really been allowing me to step into this space of openness with a soft heart. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Oh, and then at the end, I did open up on my Instagram at Paisley O'Shea any questions that you had in regards to spirituality, and it was a very vague question. It's just any spiritual, I don't know, questions that you have, because I feel like I'm pretty vocal about spiritual practices. And when I say spiritual practices, breathing is a spiritual practice. I don't mean getting all woo-woo, which I love doing that, but spirituality definitely has a broad spectrum of terms, and spirituality to one person is going to be different to spirituality to the next person. Just like I said at the beginning, that there are over 7 billion different people on this planet, so there's going to be over 7 billion different realities. And yeah, not saying that these are the right practices to do, the wrong practices. There's no right or wrongs in spirituality. There just is, in my opinion. Thought that I've been receiving a lot of DMs on Instagram after I've been posting a lot of spiritual content and all that good stuff, that some people may need some guidance or some inspiration, maybe just some inspiration. I love watching these videos and just tapping into everyone else's spiritual side and their spiritual practices, just to get that inspiration and that motivation. Yeah, creativity flowing. First, And definitely root practice for me is my yoga practice. And I know that doesn't come as a surprise because I am a 500-hour registered yoga teacher. Definitely is my first love. And I feel like I've talked about this before on I think I made like a yoga path or spiritual path video. It was like one of my first videos I ever posted. It's a long one, kind of rough around the edges, but kind of explains everything that I've gone through spiritual wise. Yeah, yoga has definitely been the gateway into my spiritual journey. I feel like those who practice yoga regularly will understand what I'm talking about. It's literally just such a beautiful way to step into that space in such a natural way, I guess, with lack of a better word. Like, you go to these yoga classes and most of the time the teacher who's teaching you through the practice or guiding you through the practice is going to spit a little bit of yoga knowledge, a little spirituality, and the way that a lot of yoga teachers articulate these nuances or ideologies is such a beautiful and opening way to kind of step into it. Kind of like perks your ears up and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because it feels good. When you're doing yoga and you're flowing with your breath and your body, it feels good. It feels liberating. It feels exciting and new, and it feels like you're connecting. It wasn't the case for me in my first yoga practice. I talked about this before, where it's like I literally couldn't even touch my toes. I did not know what I was getting into. I felt extremely overwhelmed with my first yoga practice, but I couldn't help but acknowledge the feeling of openness I had afterwards. And it was strictly for physical benefits when I stepped into that practice, but I couldn't help but notice, wow, my body actually feels really good, even though I was miserable the entire time. So that's what got me to come back for more and more and more and more. And then eventually I began teaching it. Yeah, my practice is definitely one of the forefronts of how I connect back to self. Whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed, I always love to roll out my mat and just reconnect, ground down, recenter, and just be. And I think one of the most beautiful ways that you can do this is by movement. I mean, movement definitely is medicine, and I feel like it's one of the most easy and cheap ways to get out of your mind and into your body and just fully be in the present moment and let everything go. I'm a huge advocate for yoga or anything movement. You know, you don't have to love yoga to do a mindful movement. I mean, an F45 class can be mindful movement as well. Like, that could definitely be your form of yoga. I think that kind of has like a stereotype in the Western world of just like this beautiful skinny white woman drinking green juice and wearing her Lululemon. Love Lululemon, by the way, I work for it, so love it. You get the idea of going into a really expensive studio and like that's the yoga practice, which is so not what yoga is. I mean, if that's what yoga is to you and it works for you, beautiful. That could totally be your yoga practice. I have to watch what I say because literally anything could be a yoga practice. Like, yoga practice can literally be walking outside and just listening. That's yoga. That's yoga in itself because you are connecting, right? I think that yoga can be any practice of connection. So I say that I practice yoga every single day, but that literally could be when I first wake, taking 3 intentional rounds of breath. That's a yoga practice. That's literally it. Anything that brings you back to self, whether you're stretching on your mat in a yoga class or in a hot yoga core power studio, or maybe you're just taking a walk in nature. That is yoga, and you're connecting and you're letting that authentic self come through, and you're allowing yourself to be validated and heard and seen and loved with no judgment. You're just observing. And yeah, I mean, long story short, that's what yoga is for me. When I practice yoga, I do love to, when I can, attend a class. I think that as teachers, it is so important to be guided as well. I step into that space of being taught and being led and guided. I feel like I'm able to be more inspired and more open and flow easier in my own practice. So I love attending classes, but when I don't, I really do love tapping into an intuitive flow. So that means to me just rolling out your mat, sitting with yourself, connecting with your breath, and just moving in a way that feels so good and that feels right. You know, I feel like I've been told throughout, you know, my yoga practice and through other teachers that we need to practice the poses that are challenging and are hard, which I fully believe is a beautiful space to step into. But I feel like when you're trying to reconnect back to your own practice, it is so important to do the poses, the asanas, the movement that make you feel really good, because that's going to bring you back onto your mat. each and every day. I just love to move with my breath and body and do some weird flows. Yoga's weird in and of itself, and when you really allow your body to move, it may feel funky and you may hear some snap, crackles, and pops. That's literally your body just releasing prana, stagnant energy. I mean, prana should be flowing freely in your body, and we use yoga to allow these channels in our body to open up and move that prana freely. But when we have these snap, crackles, or pops or tightness, that's stagnant prana that needs to be released, and yoga is one of the best ways to do that. Yay! Yoga is one of my favorite practices. Easiest, cheapest way. You literally don't need anything. You literally just need your body and your breath and the willingness to move and to get a little weird. Second practice that I love stepping into, and I've been really diving into this lockdown especially, is breath work. That breath work is such an amazing way to stay present, and I feel like breath work has definitely allowed me to step into a meditative space a lot easier. If you're like me and sitting in stillness is kind of hard, a little bit sticky, and a little bit more difficult, definitely recommend some guided breath work or meditation. I feel like that's a meditation in and of itself. I'll dive into meditation in the next one because that is my next way of connecting back to self. But there's something so beautiful about connecting to the breath and intentionally breathing in such a profound and connected way. And one of my favorite breathwork practices that I use is the Soma breathwork. Niraj, I think that's his name. My mom actually found him, and I think I've mentioned him in one of my videos before. I always use his video, Life-Changing Daily Meditation. It's morning gratitude breathwork meditation. It is so good. It has such a beautiful way of creating and holding space for people to do breathwork. It's guided. He tells you when to breathe in and out, when to hold. And there's also this beautiful music in the background that he creates that's like to the beat of the breath. It's really cool. Really enjoy it. That's definitely been one of the catalysts into my meditation practice. From breath work, we have that guided breath work, or we just have, the basics of traditional breath work where we have, Nadi Shodhana when you're breathing, alternate nostril breathing, or you can also do Kalabati breath. You could just Google it and I'm sure you'll get instructions on it. I really do recommend the guided breath work, and then that transitions me into meditation and / shadow work a bit. I've opened up about shadow work a little bit on my Instagram about how I believe shadow work is the unpacking of trauma in your life, and this is really heavy. Like, this can be really intense, and I definitely don't recommend doing this for the first time on your own without any guidance. I think that it's best with a professional, whether it's a meditation teacher or your therapist or anything like that. I have done shadow work with one of my yoga teachers who's also a healer as well. So I've done shadow work with her, and I've also done shadow work with my therapist. And that's what has allowed me or given me the tools to step into that space for myself on my own. Shadow work is the unpacking of trauma, anytime that you felt shame, guilt, unworthiness in your life, and like literally calling upon those memories and kind of like reliving them. I mean, it's so gnarly. It is intense. That shadow work shouldn't be taken lightly. And again, I think that you should be doing it with a professional the first time that you do it. It is one of the most liberating practices I have ever experienced, calling upon those emotions. And then whatever age I was in that memory, I imagine that my younger self, or whatever age myself was when that trauma happened, is sitting in front of me, and I'm talking her through it and validating her feelings. And it's really profound, really emotional. I did it the other day, and literally for the rest of the day, I was like out for the count, was done, could not process anything else, couldn't do anything else. I was able to manage to get out for a walk, but that was basically it. And so this energy work and this spiritual work can be really taxing, especially if you haven't done it before. Give yourself that space and that love to move through these practices with compassion and an open and soft heart. And if you feel overwhelmed, that's okay. Like, let yourself feel overwhelmed, because this shit is hard. Whenever we talk about doing the work or anything in that matter, like, we always glorify or romanticize like the end result of all the work that we've done, but we never talk about the work that it actually takes to get into that space of growth. And that work is intense and hard. So if you're having a hard time, or if you're feeling a little bit down about it or overwhelmed, I hear you, you're not alone. Trust me, I did it the other day, and it's intense, so I feel you. But I digress. Stepping off my soapbox, heading back into meditation. That is one of my favorite ways to connect back to self. I love guided meditations. I feel like that's the most easiest way for me to step into that space of just profound peace and connectedness. Like I said, if you're like me and stepping into stillness is really hard, or you just have like a really overactive brain and you are an overthinker like myself, it may be hard to quiet the mind. And meditation doesn't necessarily have to mean quieting the mind and just sitting alone. Meditation could be taking a walk. It's just whenever you're fully present, whatever is going to allow you to be fully present in the moment, that is meditation in and of itself. If you have this stereotype of meditation being like you just have to sit still and just do nothing or think nothing, that's frustrating. That's really frustrating. I've been there. I'm like, I want to be this like perfect yogi where I'm just sitting and levitating with my own essence, which is beautiful. And if you can step into that space by just sitting, kudos to you. Tell me your secrets, because that is incredible. But if you're like myself and you need a little bit of guidance, don't worry, that is meditation as well. Humans, we have this monkey brain going on. So when we're sitting and we're just allowing ourselves to be, obviously these thoughts are going to come up and these memories are going to come up, or whatever is going to come up. That's your job, to observe those memories, those thoughts, those feelings, whatever, and kind of dissect them in a way, or just look at them and let them go. And each time a thought arrives, just go like, that's funny, let that go. You know, so it doesn't mean that you have to just sit and do nothing. You're just constantly observing yourself if you're just sitting alone. Practice number 4, we're already on number 4. A little bit more on the woo-woo side, is a little bit, I mean, people may think it's gimmicky, but I love it. I love card readings. I do card reading once a week, or a lot of the times with the moon cycles, so every full moon and new moon. I really love to do a full-on card spread for that, just to get extra guidance. This is one of my favorite oracle card decks. I feel like I get some of the most profound readings out of this. You can use oracle card decks, tarot card decks, whatever. I highly recommend getting one for yourself, even if you're just like so skeptical about it, but it's just like a fun way to process what you're feeling, even if you don't think that these messages are coming from source. These cards, I like how specific they are in the way that you ask the question. Like, I always ask very vaguely, like whenever I'm doing a card reading, you're not supposed to ask a yes or no question. These are kind of getting into the nitty-gritty rules of this practice, but I always ask an open-ended question, and it usually looks like, what is the lesson I need to learn? And I always talk to my cards out loud, and I shuffle and I breathe and I go with it. Maybe do some saging as well. I love saging, even if you think that that's not, you know, necessary. I think that saging is a beautiful way to really allow yourself to step into the space of spiritual practices, or just a space of practicing and connecting. Yeah, anyways, stepping back, that was a little tangent, but stepping back into card readings, I think that oracle cards are really beautiful in receiving really authentic and encouraging messages, even if you're just looking for a little bit of guidance. Like if you're completely just like in a rut, don't know what the fuck is going on, and you're literally at your wit's end. It's really beautiful to go through some card readings. Yeah, card readings are just so cool, and you can really connect with like the art on these. Like, oh my gosh, these are so gorgeous. 5th and final practice is journaling or manifesting in my journal. So I have shown this trusty steed quite a bit in my videos before when I talked about spirituality, but this is my manifestation journal, and I usually journal everything after I do a card reading, or just any time that I really need to process, or any time that I feel motivated to manifest. I love doing mini vision boards in here as well. I think that it is so powerful to put your thoughts and your manifestations or anything down on paper, to visualize, to make it solid and concrete, and bringing it into the physical realm rather than just being up in the ethers. You're bringing it down and you're grounding down into your thoughts. Short and sweet, that's exactly what I like to do. I feel like journaling is very straightforward. I always like to start off by writing down manifestations, especially when I do new moon work. I like to write out manifestations, things I want to bring in and things I want to release. I'm thinking of doing like a whole new moon ceremony on here as well, just like a video to show what I like to do and how I like to step into that space. And I would love to eventually host some new moon ceremonies. I was going to do one before lockdown happened with some of my girlfriends, but then I got really sick. I think I was just like chronically hungover, like really bad, like could not get out of bed. And I had to bail, and then I just chickened out. Let's move on to the questions that I received. Hopefully I received some questions. I get really anxious when asking questions on Instagram. I feel like no one's gonna ask them, so let's see if anyone has asked them. It's okay if no one has. Oh, okay. Okay, I got a few. Yay! So first question, how your journey started. I feel like I kind of delved into that at the beginning of the video. Long story short, yoga. Definitely stepping into that space of yoga, and especially once I started teaching, I feel like that just completely catapulted me into this spiritual world and the world of practices and connecting back to myself. And to be fair, my mom actually did tarot card readings with me when I was really little, just like for fun and everything. And I remember like asking about like boys liking me and stuff. I've definitely always been open to that, and I feel like I've always wanted to, you know, hold space for people and to be at service for people. Yeah, I don't know. So that's kind of how I stepped into it. It's always been a thing in my life, but definitely the catalyst has been, you know, yoga practice and yoga teaching. Next question. What is the first way that you have connected back to yourself? Ooh, interesting. What's the first practice I have stepped into? I feel like my answer is always going to be yoga. It's like fully rooted into my spirituality and how I've stepped into this space. So yeah, definitely. If I need to find a good source of ethical white sage, hit me up. Well, thank you very much. I know that you're in the United States though, so I feel like that would be a tall order to ask for you to ship it all the way out to New Zealand, but definitely would highly recommend, if you are gonna buy white sage, to source it ethically and locally as well. Last question, only received 3, but that's a-okay. What is your favorite form of meditation? I have a very hard time of finding one that sticks. Okay, I think I delved into this again pretty much during this video, but my favorite form of meditation is any kind of guided breath work. Breath work can be a form of meditation. Literally anything could be a form of meditation. Again, in my opinion, there are no right or wrongs. It's just anything that brings you into stillness and into that present moment in an authentic and safe way. I definitely feel like anything guided is my favorite. I will leave a few links in the box below of my favorite guided meditations. We'll definitely share that, and that's just the conclusion of everything. I hope that this was helpful, inspiring, I don't know, eye-opening. I don't really know what this video was. I thought it would be fun to step into this space and show how I like to get my woo-woo on, you know? All that good stuff is exciting and really fun. And yeah, thank you so much for being here and for holding space for me always and accepting me for who I am. I know that you guys don't really have a choice of like what I post, but you just always accept for what I post. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me and for listening, and I hope that you can step into this space in a really beautiful and powerful way for your own self. And again, these are just the practices that allow me to feel connected. You can step into whatever practices feel good for you. This is strictly just what works for me. And again, everyone has a different reality, so everyone's practice is going to be different, and certain practices are going to stick with you while others will just completely not resonate, and that's totally okay. The most important thing is you listen to yourself and you find the practices that align fully with you. Thank you again. Happy Monday if you're in New Zealand or whenever you're watching this. I love you so much. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you on Thursday. Bye.